Donna's World.
Hello everyone, welcome to Donna's World, and to thank God it's Friday. Now, this week, I've taken a break from my normal habitat in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, and I'm down in Port Harcourt, which is a coastal city I come from, and I came here to meet my sister and to do some family business. So, Leila, you've met her before actually, some of you on previous video, but Leila, say hello.
Hello.
Okay. So, my sister lives in London, and we actually met here for a very, very sad reason. This is the family home in which we grew up. And we also grew up in London, just lots of shuttling and issues around the Civil War, but we basically grew up here as well as in London. My father actually built this house with his friend, Uncle Mike, a great architect. And at one time, I think honestly, it was pretty much the best house in Port Harcourt. And it was in landscaped grounds with a swimming pool and a tennis court and lemon trees, and it was fabulous. But it has fallen into a bit of disrepair. I mean, some areas look fine, but generally, work needs to be done. And it's basically been uninhabited for the past decade. Because I was kidnapped from this house in 2015, and I developed a phobia. I've never actually been back here since the kidnapping, apart from the night I was released. And my mother loved this house so much. I mean, she was into landscape gardening, and the garden was fabulous in her heyday. But her heyday started to fade away. Shortly after my kidnapping, she developed dementia. The psychiatrist told us that it was some sort of trauma-related dementia, but I don't know if that's true, because her sister also had dementia, but I digress. The issue being that this was my mother's pride and joy. It was my father's passion project. They built this house and the gardens together. But, towards the end of her life, she couldn't live here anymore. So she moved to be with me in Abuja, where I worked. I was working, and the house has been vacant. I mean, we've got a housekeeper, we've got a gardener, we've got security guards, but nobody lives here. No member of the family. And I have come here with my sister because we have been offered reasonable sums of money for the house, the gardens, the whole compound. And I am completely devastated at the thought of selling my childhood home and something that gave my parents, it was a sanctuary for my parents. And my sister and myself have been discussing whether it's worth it. I mean, it obviously makes sense if the house is going to be empty, and we're going to be running up bills with a housekeeper and a gardener and all that, and nobody actually lives here. But I mean, I stay in hotels when I come to Port Harcourt, because ever since the kidnapping, I've been too scared to sleep here. My sister does sleep here, but she only comes for a couple of weeks a year. So it's kind of like, I think we may have reached the end game where we have to seriously consider the offers we're receiving. And like I said, I'm devastated. Every time I think about it, I start crying. I'm going to try and hold in the tears on this video. Because I remember my parents sitting on the terrace, having tea on the balcony. I remember my mother, when she was well, walking up and down the driveway to get some exercise, inspecting her flowers, So, I mean, first let me ask my sister what memories do you have of the house, and how do you feel about the prospect of selling it?
Yeah, well, I have fond memories, and I think it's a beautiful space. I love the fact that when my dad and Uncle Mike designed it, they made it sort of open with lots of grounds, gardens, plants, and then my mother loved the trees. and doing the garden and so on. And so I love the fact that there was space and air. I can't. This kind of being cooped up in a kind of tiny space with nowhere to breathe feels awful. So it is nice, and I like it. The design is quite unique. But in terms of the attitude to selling it, I just think that actually our lives aren't about property and bricks and mortar. That there's more to our lives than that. And you have to kind of look forward and think, what is my next phase, is my attitude, and what will make me happy. I don't think it makes sense to keep somewhere empty if actually selling it can create a future life that's going to be positive. So
it does become a bit like a museum.
Yeah.
When you preserve everything, everything here is exactly as mommy and daddy left it.
And this particular seat we're sitting on, my dad used to love sitting here because it was a perfect breeze. You don't need any air conditioning or anything. If you sit here, open the door, which we haven't got open because of the lighting, open the door and there's breeze going through. So no matter how hot it was, you'd always be cool. So I always remember him sitting, not in this chair, he had a different armchair that he'd sit in. So all of those are good memories. But there are memories about people which aren't about property. And actually the memory of him here remains whether the house is here or not. So I would, in an ideal situation where money is no object, I would keep it. Why not? I just keep it. You put lots of money. It already costs a lot to keep. You put lots of money in, and you keep it, and it's there. But when I wouldn't sacrifice the future for the historic memory of a past thing. It's like if nobody's here, then actually it's just sitting here, and it's empty anyway. So I can't see what the point would be of selling it. So I definitely think my attitude generally to life is you think about what you want in the future and you use the resources you have and you can afford to create something else that would be of value and that you love. Create a different place with a different garden, different flowers that you have chosen and you like and you build and so on. So I'm not sad as it is sad on some levels, but I've kind of psychologically got to a point where I think, you know what, an empty place, if you need the money, isn't worth diminishing your life for. That's my attitude. It's like, why live in meager circumstances if actually you can create something, a good life, by letting go of the past?
Well, you see, the thing is, it's so funny because my sister and myself, we are close. We're good friends. I think we'd have been friends even if we hadn't been siblings. But, we are like chalk and cheese in some ways and in many ways. For example, she's a socialist. I'm not.
Absolutely proud.
She's a socialist to the core. In fact, she's a hard left socialist. And I am sort of like, I wouldn't call myself she thinks I'm very right wing, but I call myself right of center. Okay? So, okay, but we both dislike Donald Trump. So, we have some political views in common. And I was just trying to say that, her attitude is very practical. I know for a fact that she's had her own emotional issues around letting go of the past, letting go of the family home. But, I'm far more sentimental, if you like, and maybe traditional. So, to me, this feels like letting my parents down. But I know my parents wanted this house to stay in the family forever. They would love to think that my son, Oliver, who currently lives in Los Angeles, would inherit this house and the grounds. But the thing is, Oliver's not interested in living in some provincial town in Nigeria. I mean, this is meant to be the capital of the oil industry, but it's not that, sophisticated. It's not like Lagos or Abuja. We have lots of friends and relatives here. And, I'm almost convinced that if I go ahead and sign off on a sale, I will start being wanted by my parents. They did not want. Neither of them could have stomached the idea.
What's quite interesting, I think, about that, yeah, you're right. I do feel that if there were heirs, if you like, who wanted to be here, that's fine. I think Port Harcourt is coming up actually well. As I landed in Port Harcourt this time, I was like, wow, it's looking pretty good and it's becoming an international city. You may hate. I actually
No, I don't hate it.
and it's coming back to what it used to be, which is the Garden City. I love the village that we're from, Bodo in Ogoniland, which is just like the creeks and so on. I love it.
It's about an hour's drive from
yeah,
Port
but the nature is amazing in the place. But what I would say, and I would often say to my parents when they make some of the points about it, I was like, are you living in your own parents' house? Your parents two build houses, they're in the village, why don't you live there? You know, because each generation creates, I think, its own future. So everybody, we could all go back to our ancestral homes. I do feel that we should maintain our ancestral home in Bodo where, because my parents are buried there mainly, actually, it's not just about bricks and mortar, those are where they're buried. And I think that's fair enough. So the resources and effort, we put it into making sure that there's some, their resting places is in good shape. Because if we don't make decisions, you'll end up with actually completely gone. So to build what is effectively just simple but permanent resting places for them, I think is important.
I think, there's more to it than just bricks and mortar. Of course, there's more to life than bricks and mortar. Memories and people matter. Flesh and blood matters more than bricks and mortar. And there are plenty of good reasons not to cling to property for the sake of clinging to property, and not to be overly sentimental if you don't actually need a particular residence, Because, if none of us has been able to carve out a career in Port Harcourt, that's why nobody lives here. She works in London, I work in London, I work in Abuja, So, but you see, the thing is, to me, it symbolizes more than just a house. It's about my father's dreams, it's about memories of childhood, it's about when things were good, when I still had dreams and I still believed the future could be bright. And it's about tradition. And it's about handing the baton from one generation to the next. So, but the thing is, if I'm too scared to sleep here because I was kidnapped from it, I've actually seriously considered having therapy so that I can summon up the courage to at least retire here, because I'm 65. Perfectly, it makes total sense to start winding down and to come and live in a quieter place like Port Harcourt and not to have to pay rent.
I was going to say that, our father's dreams, I would say, are actually out of our bricks and mortar, true. So some of his dreams, I think we have tried to take forward in terms of thinking about the education and providing scholarships for poor children in our hometown in Bodo and Ibuni, for example. So that would be a dream that I would, if I had it for me, I would prefer to put my resource into that and thinking, out of the efforts we've made, the few children in that place are going to be, who are bright but have absolutely no money to go to school, are going to be able to make something of themselves. That for me is legacy, more than keeping bricks and mortar that nobody is living in. But actually, I have to say that I've opted out of the struggle in Nigeria for equality as a socialist. I would have loved to try and make the world better for poor people in this country. But I've given up on that idea because of the state of the politics, really, and something that I can't cope with or stomach. But actually, I would say that if things were different, I would have liked to do something that would mean that people are not living in poverty in where we come from. That was like our dad's dream too.
Well, let me just briefly explain, because I think our international viewers will not understand. In Nigeria, regardless of where you live or where you were born, you actually come from a village. Everybody is tied to a village, right? So when we say Port Harcourt is our hometown, what we mean is that it's the capital of the state we come from. Because we have a federal system like America. So here we have, I think we've got 50 states in America. Here we have 36. So we come from a state called Rivers, and Port Harcourt is the capital of that state. But we come from a village that's about an hour's drive from Port Harcourt. Everybody in Nigeria comes from a village. A few people, it's complicated, but I just wanted to explain what she meant when she says our hometown, and Port Harcourt is our hometown, but we also come from a village near Port Harcourt. So
yeah. Anyway, and also I'm not that state specific, so I've got involved with a friend of mine who's doing scholarships in Lagos, and I'm happy to support that. So it's just that for me, it's the ethos and spirit of trying to make life better for people who haven't got privilege and who have more choice and money and so on. And I would,
Yeah, but that's a different
and
topic.
no, what I mean, why I bring it up is because for me, when we think about somebody's legacy, it's like actually our father cared about that. And that for me is an important legacy. You don't have to go with your parents' legacy either. That's the other choice. Your parents could be a despot. If Donald Trump is your parent and you didn't agree with him, you wouldn't just follow his ways. So
No,
I think you can pick from your parents what it is that you value about where they got to.
Sure. Well, maybe one of these days I will make the decision to have therapy and move here, retire here, or semi-retire here. I am a writer. You can write from anywhere nowadays, and maybe one of these days you'll wind up with a reality TV show about in Dolly's world about the renovation of this property because you can't actually live here without doing quite a bit of work on bathrooms and bedrooms that haven't been used for years. And I might even, my dream is to turn it into a really chic little, beautiful boutique hotel. So I'll have my own wing and then I can rent out 3 or 4 bedrooms to the general public. And that would be a good pension actually.
It would be beautiful. I would love it if we could afford to, because then for me to be able to come, swan around, the place is lovely, it's really well done up and so on. There's a pool at the back again, there's a tennis court and so on. It would be a great place for a holiday. I would love it, and I would love to come to Nigeria and I'd stay longer. And the older I get, the longer I would stay, if that was the case. So I'd love it.
So I'll let you know if I'm able to pull it off. I'm talking to banks, I'm talking to potential investors. If I can pull it off, that is what will happen. And as I said, I might even do a little reality TV show about renovating a family home and all the sort of like dramas, because you've always got the carpenter or the plumber who is crazy, and it might be quite good fun to do as a project. And my viewers might even enjoy watching the process of restoring a family home to its former glory. Okay, well, this brings me around to a thought based on something my sister said earlier, where she said that when my parents used to harp on about how we must never let this house go, she pointed out to them that they had let their own parents' houses go. So it's part of the cycle of life, that as you move on, you get older, you leave a lot of things from your childhood behind, and that might include your family home. I mean, obviously, there are families where generations have stayed in the same house, mostly grand old houses in places like the United Kingdom. We call them stately homes. But, anyway, I'd love to know what Donny's World viewers think. I mean, at some point, most of you will have or will face this dilemma about what to do with the home your parents lived in. And, if you had a happy childhood, or at least some happy memories of the life you had in that property with your parents, or you just remember your parents being happy there, is it difficult? Have you found it difficult to sell parental properties? Or have you been really practical about it and sort of like wrapped everything up and picked up any money that's available from the sale and moved on? And as Layla says, created new memories, new gardens, new homes, new spaces that are beautiful. I'd love to hear from you about, whether it's something you're dreading or something you're looking forward to or something that's already happened to you. Over to you.
Yeah, well, what I would say is that in the UK, in my situation, for example, and most people of our age now, your house is you're in it in order that you sell it to pay for your care when you're old. So maybe that affects your attitude to property. But I think that for me, there is something about memory and beauty and home that has meaning, and it's not just a logical thing. So there's emotion and sentiment attached, and that has to be recognized. And I can see that that's part of what you're expressing.
but there is also something about how do you deal with that in order to move forward.
Well, maybe the fact that I was more or less exiled from this home by a very traumatic incident like a kidnapping might also have something to do with how emotional I feel whenever the issue comes up. So, you know, well, we look forward, as always, to hearing your opinions about this.
Yeah. Okay.
So, thank you very much. We won't do any...
Happy to be a guest. Thank you for having me, and I'll look forward to watching all the future ones.
Okay.